Hello everyone and welcome to our circle, Anne Salve Women. For today I'm going to be talking about my article, How Incomparable is the Strength of a Good Mother. Now, many times when people tell you, you're such a good mother, or you're such a good teacher, or you're such a good person, you know, it's interesting because for me, I always feel like being hard on myself, as many of us are, quietly, silently. I always right away get a flashback of times that maybe I wasn't. You know, you try so hard in life to do things right, and it is in your stumbles where then you are able to understand why you have been bruised or why you created bruises and why you have ended up falling. And then you then reflect that very moment and then realize that you have the opportunity to do better. And I'd like to think that that has really truly strengthened me in growing up, from the time that you're a child to all the way to becoming an adult, and then all the many roles that we play. And it almost seems as if there are just times where you think, you know, I almost had it right. And then there are times where you go, gosh, this is so magnificent. You know, the feeling that I have is amazing. I feel just as if I have done everything right. And then it's funny because sometimes several years later, you will have looked back and asked yourself, what, did I do something wrong? I thought I did really well back then. And then there's something in the near future that you run into in the present of times that makes you go, whoa, maybe you didn't do as great as you thought. And you know, that's the hardest piece, is accepting that and then growing from it and saying to yourself, you know, it's funny because I think that the world is always going to be trying to make you believe that there is that power within the world to make you feel that you haven't done as good, you haven't been as great of a role model as you thought you could. And you know, you just have to push through it and say to yourself, you know what, it's for me though. It's for me to grow. It's for me to know. It's for me to really show the world that I am growing like everyone else. And if you don't like the way I'm growing, if I'm in, you know, I like to think that you grow to be the rose that you are, and some people grow to be the tulip that they are. But as long as they are working towards that blooming, and sometimes our petals will, and then all of a sudden we come back alive, there's still that rooted piece that makes you go, you know what, this is something that I can do again and again and again, and just continue to see me bloom and continue to see me grow in the manner that I really hope to. And then eventually I would be able to then create a foundation where then you can root for me and you can create a garden from just the very piece that I have become, and that therefore I will then inspire you to just take a piece from me and then continue on and move about your beauty and create your own gardens. And that's how we propagate, right? So how incomparable is the strength of a good mother? From superhero to supervillain, you know, I'm wearing one of my mama's crocheted blouses. She has made me endless amounts, and these are one of the ones that I truly have always thought to myself, you know what? You know, there are years and decades where you go, I don't know if that's that. I'm feeling it right now. And then all of a sudden there comes that time you go, where is that? That's the one that I want to wear today. And so it's always nice to wear something and then tell your colleagues, look what my mom made me. And, you know, tell my students, look what my mom made me. And, you know, she may not ever know it, because there were times where you didn't know how to be as appreciative, because sometimes when people give you abundance, they don't realize what is missing when they haven't felt that gap yet. And you know, my mom just loved to crochet all my life, that I didn't really ever have new clothes. And so many times I would go and, you know, with clothes that she had made for me. And can you imagine that? That is just amazing, right? But when you grow up, you're thinking to yourself, I have to bring back, and I know I didn't bring this in my article, but was it the comedy by Eddie Murphy, Raw, where he's like seeing everybody else having this McDonald's burger, and you know, he's just crying because his mom says, I can make something better than that, and then ends up making this burger with like from this sandwich bread, white bread, and have like this patty in the middle and then grease just dripping out of it and so forth, and everyone's making fun of him. He's like, oh, and he's crying. He's like, my mama made it. So that is naturally, I would like to think, and this is why I've really grown to be so forgiving. It's hard as a parent, but every day I'm under training as a teacher, because sometimes, you know, kids are who they are, and that honesty can really hurt sometimes, but you have to be the stronger person and know that they don't mean anything by it. There's growth in there, right? Of course, you want to teach them respect, self-respect, and respect for others, and respect for your environment, and be the person that you would want others to look upon, and be that example that you would want to follow. And I, you know, said things like, would you hire you? I mean, anything that comes to mind that becomes like my motto of the year. And so as a parent, you're like the superhero when they're young. Like, you could do no wrong, it's okay, they're so forgiving, and just telling you that it's totally, they look beyond your flaws and make you feel so amazing, and they become like your greatest companions, your greatest friends. You know, my children, it's like they're your life, aside from my husband, and what we have worked toward, just this, you know, this growing friendship that we end up knowing that is important for our children. You know, we're bumping heads at the same time, and sometimes you have these silent arguments and so forth. I mean, that's another article. But at the same time, it's like, you know that your kids are your life, and that you're building together, and that you're hoping to do every moment right. And yet you become the supervillain because it's in their eyes. They don't even have to say it sometimes. As they get older, they do, you know, in more ways than one. And, you know, you just tell yourself, goodness, you know, I've raised some really incredible children. And yet then all of a sudden it fires back at you, and you go, but wait, why is this happening right now? Why is it all of a sudden something's being questioned as to how everything went? And there's going to be a time where you have to really allow yourself to be picked on. One of my favorite movies is Maleficent, and that silence, you know? You just have to let people work it out around you, and just know this cannot be my distraction of being who I am. You have to make sure that you're focusing on your growth as well, because if you are allowing yourself to be molded by what other people think, you may lose yourself along the way. And if you're allowing yourself to be losing pieces, think about that masterpiece that you already were, and then you're willing to let some of that go, then you'll never be that complete masterpiece that you were meant to become. And that's how I look at it. And so I remember having that argument with my mom, you know, in high school, and you know, granted that I told you I like to tinker. I actually, at the time, I think I was 10, and again, not in my article, but I had seen my uncle like smoking a cigarette, and my dad shortly had done it too. But then I remember like rolling up some leaves. Kid you not, I like to create things, and then I was like, you know, anyone can make a cigarette, or it's, you know, what are those, cigars or so. And I rolled up like some dried up leaves into a much bigger leaf, and then I lit it up, and I started smoking at like 9 or 10. And I remember my aunt saying, hey, you don't do that, you know, that's not good, and that could get you very sick and so forth. And I didn't like it anyway, you know. And then it was in middle school one time where I actually saw someone do that in like junior high, because we had junior high. And so I remember taking a swig and then just like coughing up. And I was like, I know this was important for me to do. I had to go back to the person the next day and go, I'm not going to do that with you anymore. That's just not me. And they looked at me and they were like, okay, you know, like it was interesting, because there are just times where you do things and you go, that's not who I am. What was I thinking? You know? And so very, very early, because you see that, and then you realize this is just not who you are. But I remember being in high school and having that argument with my mama and telling her, you know what, when I have children, I'm going to let them do whatever they want. And it was just like such a calm response that put me in my place when she said, you wait until you become a parent. I believe in parent or a mother. And that bit me, you know, because when I became a parent, I really, in my being competitive in nature quietly to myself, you know, really wanted to perfect this motherhood. And so I would always pray. I mean, your greatest friend is God, right? And so for me, it's like I would always ask, am I doing everything right? Am I, you know, not to the knowledge of my children, just always hoping, even the midst, you know, because I came from yelling and all of that. And my papa, I think one of my articles at the very beginning had shared that I'd shared, you know, like just raising your voice, and I'm getting so much better at that, because then I came to the now with our younger two, the understanding I don't have to. Those were just my nerves, those were my anxiety, and you know, me being in fear of losing control or that my children would be hurt. And you know, it's like when you start to see the changes in your children, it's like this unwanted breakup that is starting to hurt you inside, because you could see they want to do less with you. They want to start to get to know more people, if more friends become their importance, and no longer are you the center of their lives. And you have to accept that, because you have to remind yourself, hey, I went through this, you know, and you just have to buckle up and know that this was something to anticipate. But no matter how much you want to anticipate it, it never comes to the point where you are fully prepared. And because again, they were your greatest friends, they were your greatest companions, and everything you did together starts to wither away. And you know, I can see that the fault is within you, because whether they want to really acknowledge their changes, they start to think that you're not as fun, you're boring, or that, you know, you don't understand. Biggest part is that you don't understand. And you try, but then all of a sudden it's like, you know, I'm just going to have to let this flow and give it time to really allow itself to release itself into truth, into full understanding as you're working through the parenthood. And so you try to be unconditional, but it's tough because your heart's guarded, and some things are being said or not said, and some actions and all of that stuff happen. And, you know, it's all of a sudden you start thinking of all those things that you did that they never took note of, all the many things that you sacrificed that they may have never understood, or that they may have never even known. And you try really hard not to be bitter, but then it's in your silence also where you're trying to work it out, because you feel like, hey, you didn't give me silence, I'm gonna give you silence, you know. And it's not on purpose. It just becomes this natural instinctive self-defense of the heart and the mind and the spirit. And so your body takes over and it just acts that way. And so I remember my former student having come by and talking to, you know, coming in to school, waited for me after school to come in, and we talked for quite some time. And it came about with her mother having passed away. And, you know, I'm not much of visiting people after they've gone, but, you know, just allowing the person to talk. And the whole time that my student was trying to explain how it was revealed to her that mom was sick and that she would be passing and so forth. And so she had somewhat of a very good closure. I'm happy for her. All I can remember was the time that I had spoken with mom on the bus, and how disappointed she was in herself, because she thought that her daughter was not happy with her, was disappointed in her, in just in her whole expression that they were the ones to board on the bus last. And I, you know, no matter what I said, I knew that there was no powerful words or words of magic that I could do to heal her at that given moment, because that's what we do as moms. You know, we want the best for our children. We want to be that superhero all the time, and the less we become that, we become more of a supervillain the older they get. And, you know, I know that there are some moms out there that have created and established that maintenance of relationship. And for me, having raised our children to really strive for more than what they know they can become. You know, I call it a hard parent sometimes, but I would say to my children, you know, you're extraordinary children, so expect extraordinary results. And, you know, that really got them to be at their greatest heights. And then all of a sudden you want to protect them some more, because you realize that they may be going on a tangent, and then you have to let go. You know, you just have to go, wait a minute. I can't do this for the rest of my life. And the more you tried to then continue on directing them, the more they pulled away. And so then you're like, okay, you know what? This is their way of saying, let me do it my way. Let me bump my head. Let me just grow until I get to know who I really am and who I want to be. And that's that piece where you kind of have to pull back and say to yourself, you know, I've given them all my strength, and I know they see that I am weak, and perhaps that, you know, in my weakness, I have given him everything I've got. And you know this, you know, it's like the siphoning that you were already willing to let go and just have all taken out of you from the moment they were born. And I don't even think you say that to yourself. It's just this natural feeling of, I'm going to give you everything I've got, and to the expense of you probably thinking at the end that I am not as everything that you need, and everything that I've got is not enough. But then you see who have they become, and you can only pray that they would be better and stronger than you. And so I remember when my mama said, you know, I hope to be stronger than you, or to be strong like you one day. And that silence, you know, it's like as time progressed, and I remember saying something and just humbling myself and reminding her how, you know, how much I believed in her, and I know that she has every ability to be the strong person that she is. This is why I had to write this article, because in thinking of Mother's Day, as my husband always says, every day is Mother's Day, and he's that kind of person that doesn't keep track of dates. I'm sure many of us, we do this where we feel like, gosh, you're so much like my papa, where, you know, they get you things on days that may not even have a date because it's a Tuesday, right? And so for me, I've really come to understand that, and I value those words, and I'm thankful for those words, because when I look at it, every moment that you have a behavior in you, you reflect and go, okay, you know what? That witticism right there, bam, you know, that was from my mom. I mean, I can't till this day crochet a dress like this or a blouse like this, and she gives me trinkets, like sometimes, you know, well, she finds things, or she wants to give me things, and so I wore this bracelet because it's just things you go, oh, thank you, and you put it away and you don't realize you haven't even worn it. And again, remember, I'm that kind of person where it's like, I don't like to be sentimental with things. I've learned to let things go. So for me, it's like, now I get to cherish. Now I get to really say, thank you so much for your strength. Thank you so much for all that you have done. And, you know, we all have our challenges. But man, I know for my sake, as a mother, I know that I am so grateful for whatever I released out of me, no matter how my children view me. I know I look at them and I go, that's some amazing creation right there, each and every one of them. And I'm grateful for it. And there's nothing that you want in return other than just do you, be the best of you, always finish what you start, and know that I will always be your greatest fanatic. That's a strong word. I will always be your greatest believer. I don't always show it, but it's because I already knew it. Everything that you have achieved, I already thank God for it. You know, I already knew it was in you. And even if you don't achieve it today, I know that there's going to be another day that when you keep pushing, you will get there. You know, if that is something that you desire, because you have that strength to persevere. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all. May all of us understand that that strength that we may think is no longer in us is because we gave it to someone else. And we gave it to someone else because that was that unconditional peace. You want all those you love to be happier than you could ever make them. And if it means that they are digging it from something else or everywhere else, because you have given your part, and that's all you can say to yourself, is what you've done is the part that you needed to do. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.